Your Holiness, thank you very much for giving VOA the opportunity to interview you in English for our worldwide audience. If you would like to answer any questions in Tibetan, please do. Since you announced your retirement as the leader of the Tibetan government in exile, how has your life changed?
Not much change, because the last 10 years, since 2001, we already have political leadership through election, elected political leadership already there. So since then, I usually describe my position since then, semi-retired position. So the main work, main decision in the hand of the elected political leadership's hand, not my hand, not my hand. So not much change. Of course, mentally, now, what I call relinquish all the sort of political sort of responsibility. So I feel more free, and I can devote my energy, my time, mainly to my commitment. That is number one commitment. I'm as a human being. On that level, I consider it is important in order to be happy human life. The ultimate source is within ourselves. Most of the people, you see, not looking that way, just money or some other material facility. That's the ultimate source of happiness. That's wrong. Of course, we need material value, material facility, but ultimate source of happy life is here. So that's my sort of number one commitment, to educate people, make aware that thing, irrespective of whether religious believer or non-believer. Then second, promotion of religious harmony. So now I can spend more time on these two fields.
How will your retirement impact the future negotiations between the Tibetan government in exile and the Chinese government? Will you disengage yourself from the process completely?
Oh yes, theoretically yes. Now I have no longer sort of responsibility. In case our elected leadership need some help, then I always available like that.
You have dealt with the Chinese leaders for the past 60 years. What lessons have you learned from dealing with them for the past 6 decades?
6 decades. Then, first lesson, I very much attracted about Marxism. So at that time, I expressed I want to join Chinese Communist Party. Still, I am Marxist. As far as the socio-economic theory is concerned, I am Marxist still. So that's one impact. Then, of course, I think last, and since mid-50s, then things change. Obviously, I very much sort of frustrated about hypocrisy. Saying something nice, but doing something different. And then, sort of too much suppression, particularly the last 50 years. So then I really respect or admire democracy, freedom.
You have dealt with 4 generations of Chinese leaders, from Mao Zedong to Hu Jintao. And we know soon that Mr. Xi Jinping will take over as the 5th generation leader. What are your observations of Mr. Xi, and what is your hope for him?
I don't know much, Xi Jinping. Of course, his father I know quite well.
Xi Zhongxun.
Xi Zhongxun, Mishuzhang. Xi Zhongxun, very nice, very jovial. That I remember. But his son, I never met, I don't know. Some people say he's thinking naturally sort of a younger person, so he's thinking. Some say more sort of open-minded, but I don't know.
A lot of Chinese people feel the Chinese government have put tremendous resources into developing Tibet, and they cannot understand why there is such widespread discontent among Tibetans, both inside and outside China. Do you think Tibetan people are ungrateful?
Now, we are human beings. Even Chinese people themselves, it is not sufficient just to give food, shelter. We are human beings. We love some other values. Indian Prime Minister, when he visited Washington, he mentioned the economy field, India behind, then people talk of China. But India, some other fundamental values, that is democracy, freedom, rule of law, transparency, freedom of speech, freedom of press, these things, which China is lacking. So these are fundamental value, human being. Now, even if the Prime Minister, Wen Jiabao himself, several times, several occasions, he expressed, now China, economically, economy field, much advanced. Now, it is highly necessary, some political reforms. He openly sort of stated. And like him, I think a lot of sort of voice about the freedom, these things now growing in China.
As you just mentioned, China...
So therefore, you see, Tibetan, firstly, like any other human being, he loves freedom. Too much restriction. And naturally, you see, feel some kind of sort of, or say, uncomfortable, that naturally. Then, Tibetan case, we have our own language, our own script. And in that script or that language, the very rich Buddhist tradition, Buddhist philosophy. So the local authority is putting restriction in these sort of subject about Tibetan religion, Tibetan culture. And that tremendous hurt. So food, shelter, food is secondary. Main thing is our culture, our own 1,000-year-old spirit. When you see someone touching that field, naturally, I think Chinese Han brothers, sisters.
I was going to mention that, as you mentioned, the Chinese economy is the second largest now in the world.
Yes.
As a spiritual leader, what is your diagnosis of the spiritual state of the Chinese people today?
According to some information, number of Chinese, including many party members, now showing interest about spirituality more and more, I heard. And then, the last few years, say more and more Chinese Han brothers, sisters from mainland China coming to see me. And many of them, when we met, crying. They really genuinely express their sort of what's their interest about Buddhism. So according to some information, the number of Buddhist believer in nowadays in China, nearly 300 million. Some say that, like that. So in any way, after all, this is China, historically Buddhist country. When I was in China, 1954, 55, a lot of temples, a lot of monasteries. So you see the bound, you see they, like in the other sort of countries where materially highly developed, so people from such sort of society, now more, I mean, a number of cases, people who have everything, even millionaire or billionaire, but they find something missing. So among such people, now gradually you see turning spirituality. So in China also, now economy growth eventually bring another level. People then feel it is something missing. Only money is not sufficient. And then also you see the corruptions, immense corruption. So these clearly sort of shows their lack of principle, moral principle.
The younger generations in China today face a lot of issues in their lives. And why do you think they should care about Tibet and what's going on there?
Oh yes, ordinary Chinese not necessarily to take care about Tibet very far.
Yes. So
but the Chinese government, you say, have to take care.
So what is your message for them, for these younger generations of Chinese, about Tibet, about the future of Tibet, and about the future relationship between China and Tibet?
I think firstly, those Chinese who feel some interest about Buddhism, then Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhist culture, there's great potential to serve millions of young Chinese brothers and sisters. It is clear.
What are your views about what happened in the Middle East, the democratic movements in the Middle East during the past year, and how relevant are they for the Tibetan and Chinese people?
After all, since the Berlin Wall disappeared, I think the world witnessed the totalitarian sort of system. There's no future. After all, the world belongs to humanity, and each country belongs to the people, not one particular party or king or spiritual leaders, like that. So, likewise, China belongs to 1.3 billion Chinese people. So then, the best way to govern their own sort of land or their own people, by the people, is the democratic system. It's the best. So the future, the whole world have to go more open society, more democratic way.
What are your views about the Western intervention in Middle East? For example, the one in Libya, when the West country.
Such things are quite complicated. We have to study, or we have to sort of judge case to case. Like intervention in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the motivation is very good. I know former President Bush, I know very well. Very nice person. His motivation I know very good. Goal also very good. But the method creates a lot of problems. So we have to judge on the spot.
How about the case in Libya?
The main sort of concern is people, innocent people suffer most.
You have 4 days left in Washington, and we haven't heard about invitation from the White House for a meeting. What is your thought on that?
No, this is my main sort of reason visit here is the performance of one Buddhist teaching, the Sanskrit word Kala Chakra, as the teaching. So meanwhile, if I have opportunity, if their side, President I know President very well. So if there is opportunity, meeting, I'm very happy. Like that.
You know, you had many rounds of dialogues with Beijing.
Yes.
What's the benefit of continued engagement with the Chinese leadership?
In any way, there is problem. Whether the Chinese government admit or not, there is problem. Whole world knows. The Chinese people also now knowing. There is problem. Have to solve. It is foolish just to ignore that or relying using force. It's short-sighted. Sooner or later, the government, central government, must find ways and means to solve this problem. So I believe only question of time. This is the central government will look the problem realistically.
We know you have announced your retirement. How about your successor? Will your successor be in any way involved in the political affairs, or from now on?
No.
Will not.
Actually, my retirement, not just me personally retire, but the almost 4-century-old tradition, Dalai Lama institution, had of both political spirituality. Now that I ended. 4-century-old tradition, now outdated, as I mentioned earlier. Like Tibet, Tibet case, Tibet belongs to Tibetan, not Dalai Lama, and not any other religious spirituality. So the Tibetans, or what's the government or the organization who look after Tibetan should be democratic way. Otherwise, so therefore, I deliberately, voluntarily, ended the 4-century-old tradition.
Why?
So now no question, the future Dalai Lama institution will remain. In case the concerned people want to keep this institution, then it will remain. But now no question, the future Dalai Lama may involve political sort of leadership. No question.
Why did you end that now, not earlier, not later? Why now?
10 years passed, as I mentioned earlier, semi-retired position. And then the recent sort of our election looks Tibetan, at least in free country, they're quite mature about democratic sort of system. So I thought, now right time. That's the reason. My desire to change the system since my childhood. The 13, 14-year-old,
Yes.
I already noticed the Tibetan then existing government sort of system is very backward. Must change. And then, now I feel very happy.
We know a lot of ancient cultures or native cultures have weakened or disappeared because of market economy and globalization and urbanization, etc., etc. So are you optimistic about Tibet's culture, the future for the Tibet's culture and its traditions?
Tibetan culture is culture of non-violence, culture of peace, culture of compassion. So that kind of culture, not only Tibetan interest or Tibetan interest, but also I think any people. Now, this planet, I think more and more people really fed up about violence and cheating, exploitation. Such occasion, I think Tibetan cultural heritage, honest, compassionate, truthful. I think that kind of culture is something I think helpful, and particularly, directly, millions of young Chinese really gets benefit from Tibetan culture if you see they pay more attention. Then Tibetan Buddhism, particularly Nalanda tradition, is not just a religion, just a faith. That in it is a lot of explanation about the human mind, about the human sort of emotion, these things. Therefore, some top Western scientists, they really seriously showing interest to learn information about emotion, about mind from Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So science increasing, science growing. So the concept which mentioned in Nalanda tradition, now also you see now increasing.
We know you let us do this interview with you because you have a message for the Chinese people. What do you have to say to them?
China, ancient nation, 1,000 years, I think 5,000 years of cultural heritage, and Chinese people, hardworking, and generally speaking, very realistic people. So we respect, we admire. Now Chinese people, while you are catching up materialistic value, you should not forget your own 1,000-year-old traditional value. That's very important.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness.
Good.
Thank you very much for the interview. It's a great pleasure talking to you.
Okay.